Yes, this is like
Isn't that ready to rock and roll back there?
It's not quite 7 yet.
I know,
did you
just in case. Pretty close.
this Ron? This is a breakdown of all the calls we ran since January. The past 2 years, I went back to the past 2 years and highlighted like how many forest fires we've had and extrications from people we've had out of
Okay.
the woods.
I will read it. You ready to get started?
Ready on the right, ready on the left. Up there, get signed in. Okay, call the meeting of the Halfmoon Township Board of Supervisors to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the
To,
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Open announcement, this meeting's being recorded live in CNET's YouTube channel. There's no Zoom meeting tonight due to circumstances beyond our control. Citizen comments. Anybody in the audience like to make any comments? You have notes?
I want to make comments about the budget, but, so I wait till that comes up.
Well, you can comment now if you'd like. You can make comments later, but you can comment now.
Whatever you prefer.
Doesn't make any difference. I'll let you speak.
I'll wait till.
Either way. All right, we'll wait till we get down to that portion of things. All right, having none.
There's several people signed up.
I thought
I think
that's,
there's 10
that's his year.
Oh, I thought that was. the
If you want to provide comments, then you should sign in. If you have any comments, you feel free
Well,
now at this
that
time
makes
to
it
come up.
easier because we gotta do the minutes and we need to know who's talking
Right.
at which particular time.
We'll keep a record, so.
Yeah, I do have something, several people ahead of me. As you know, for the last couple of months, I've sort of tried to make a real push on the theme of communication and making sure that citizens are able to contact supervisors, so if they have any comments. And I was wondering if there's been any discussion of that or decisions about that. One thing, I was looking through the website tonight, looking for some of the agenda and so forth, and I see that there is now a listing for each supervisor, an email for each supervisor within the township township, Halfmoon Township, what is it?
The email address.
Yeah,
Mhm.
email address. So I don't know if that's something new, or if I had simply not found it anymore, or
As far as I
before.
know, it's been there, but
On the website
Yes.
or? I
It's
don't
got
know.
each supervisor's name
Yeah.
and the township, Halfmoon
And the email,
Township.us.
the Halfmoon Township email address for each supervisor.
Yes,
Okay, I
an individual
thought
one.
that existed.
Okay. Well, maybe I hadn't found it before. I didn't know if that was a
Amy might have moved
addition.
it around, I don't know, but
Okay,
she did mention.
But I can ask about that.
yeah, okay. So, so you would direct people to use those, and can they depend on getting a response to them, if that's
My
the way they
preference
choose?
is still, I think it's probably most of our preference, still to send an email to supervisors at halfmoontwp.us. Because when you send an email to that address, it sends to every one of us. I think that's the more comprehensive way to, you know, address us or to send a question or whatever you wanna send. So, you know, that, I think that's the best email address to use. If you have something specifically for a supervisor, I guess you could use the individual email addresses.
Okay. And there, well, I think that certainly is an improvement over what I thought was there previously. But still, I think it would be good to be able to contact people. I understand that the county has a name,
A
address.
directory, yeah.
Telephone number, email address. There's a lot of errors on it, but that it might be updated. I'm wondering if Amy couldn't put that on the Half Moon Township website.
So you want a link to the county, is that what you're saying?
Well, actually, just the information,
It would be up to the county to update their information,
but since it's
their
gonna,
directory.
since it exists there, why not just do it for the Half Moon Township website, so they wouldn't have to link to an
We can ask her
inaccurate?
about it, see what it would take to do it.
Yeah, just
Mhm,
put the information there.
mhm. You mean for all county officials? Or
Yeah.
all elected officials?
No, just for township,
Just for the township?
yes,
Okay. All right.
okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Yep. Anyone else, citizen comments? Derek,
Should I speak here?
well, come on up here and talk to the microphone.
Introduce yourself.
For those who don't know me, my name is Derek Reese. I'm currently serving as a deputy chief over Port Matilda. As you guys seen in front of, as I handed to you guys, was a printout of how many calls we've ran in each municipality so far this year. A spreadsheet of each, what type of call it was. Coming here tonight, we've been talking, as most of you know, there was a big wildfire on Monday. Back at Toe Hill, it burnt 24.3 acres. It was tough to get into. We had to utilize UTVs, which are side-by-sides, to access the fire, because some brush trucks could not make it down to the head of the fire where it was burning. Coming here tonight, we discussed for the past couple months, kicked around the past year, about purchasing a side-by-side to further help the community and help ourselves with calls. This would only help us out on wildfires, search and rescue details, and if a person was, would fall and get hurt on the game lands or in the woods, we could access them via the side-by-side. We currently had a call last week. It was a logging incident. A gentleman was hit in the head with a tree. It took half an hour for the side-by-side to show up that we called for, which was fortunate enough because the life flight was a half hour away. But if it wouldn't have been a half hour away, life flight comes out of the airport, which is an 8-minute ETA plus liftoff to Worth Township. If we would have had that side by side, we could have had that. We could have had him packaged and care and out of the woods with under 10 minutes. But instead, we had to wait that half hour, which could dramatically change the outcome of the call, depending, if we were able to get the medic in or get him out and get him on his way.
Are these equipped to be able to transport
Yes.
a
Yes,
injured
you'll see
patient?
in that page I gave you there, Ron. If you flip to the next page, there's pictures of a body for a UTV. You'll see that first one is like a storage bin underneath, and there's an open space up top. That open space would be utilized for a backboard
Okay.
where we put the patient. And that second page, you'll see there's a seat there. That would be for the medic. So the medic could sit there and tend to the patient while we're on the way out.
Okay.
That's similar to what Warriors Mark Fire Company has?
Yes, this would be bigger though.
Bigger than Warriors Mark.
A fully equipped side-by-side. Any idea on the cost of a fully equipped
That,
unit?
as you can see, the price of that one is there. The body itself, the custom built body is 20 grand, so you're looking around 65,000 with all the lights and stuff to be equipped.
That's 65,000 for the unit.
Yes.
Does that include a trailer?
No.
No trailer.
That medical equipment that you would normally have as part of your duties
would be stored on that UTV. Depending on the type of call it is, like if we're going out emergency medical assist, we'd put the backboard right on the UTV with our med bag, make sure our med bag was in there and we go. A wildfire, we'd probably pull the backboard off so we weren't losing it in the woods or had to take it off to get more guys so they weren't trampling on it. But this would help us reach fires that are further down in the woods instead of, it's quite a hoof walking 24.3 acres when they're trying to chase a wildfire.
Yeah.
You can, a lot of times you can control it with just a fire line by a rake, backpack blowers, and chainsaws going around it. But when you have heavy fire pushing, you're going to need some water. Because you always got to take chance of a spot fire, which is where fire is burning, the wind blows, it could take a number 200 feet down this way and just start burning. So there'd be, I think that's 75-gallon tank, and we would get a high pressure pump, which would turn that 75 gallons into basically 750 gallons. Because with these high pressure pumps now, they're going in and putting out a room and contents fire, which is a 10 by 10 room.
Are there other manufacturers that you can utilize?
They used to go to Polaris because Polaris built a 6x6. Polaris no longer builds a 6x6. Can-Am is now the only one that's building a 6x6. The reason why you need a 6x6 is because of the integrity to put that much weight on a chassis like that for going out across hills and through steep, with a steep terrain. You'd have better traction, a better center of gravity.
I take it they're all-wheel drive.
Yeah.
I often wondered.
Well, they can be all-wheel drive or two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive.
Yeah.
So this would be four-wheel drive.
Kubota doesn't make anything like that?
Kubota does make one. That is what Worries Mark and it's what Worries Mark has, but they do not build one big enough to equip what we.
It's not a 6x6?
No, it's just a regular side by side, and it does struggle to get through the woods because it's a diesel and it's the way Kubota builds them with the way they're set up.
They're not fast.
No. And Mountaintop has a Sandy Ridge has a Mahindra that they have the side-by-side. And they started out with that and they turned around. I think they got rid of that and went to a Can-Am or something because it does not have the center of gravity for pulling hills or going out across the hill on.
So even a small pickup truck with 4x4 capacity would not be able to handle the...
It would, but we wouldn't be able to get it through the woods like they were able, like...
I mean a small pickup truck, not a full size.
Like you're talking like what?
Like a Ranger.
No, this would not be able to fit
Still
through.
wouldn't be able to...
Yeah, we can take these a lot more places.
They do have a lot of versatility.
Is there anything that we ought to be, and this is just an aside, but is there anything we ought to be doing with regard to Game Commission or DCNR or somebody to improve the, let's call them pathways or fire roads into these forests, in the game lands?
Not
to
really, because
improve access.
the Game
Not to
Commission,
avoid buying a piece of equipment, but
the Game Commission doesn't like to make their paths accessible for big trucks because the less
I understand
people they
that.
have trying to travel on them, the better. That's why the ones back here on Toe Hill, you've seen how tight it was with just taking our brush truck
the
back.
game
there.
lands do have fire roads. These don't,
Yes, but
generally speaking.
Used to be.
yeah.
But I just came down the mountain from where was it? Blandberg, up above on top of the mountain from Bellwood, and there's game lands all over the place up there, and the roads going in and out of there, I mean, are large.
Because they're logging those more often than what they are back here.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have those logging paths.
This is actually relatively small game lands, generally speaking.
I think it's 238 acres. I looked it up.
There's a lot more than that back there.
There's 6,500 acres.
Well,
total.
yeah, that's what runs from here to over here to where it meets
Yeah.
up with Scotia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's good information. I mean, we'll have to take it into consideration.
Because we had talked about the money that was kind of allocated into the fire tax taking that money and putting it towards the purchase of that.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
So the fire company, I mean, you guys get the money that was gonna be designated to the that the taxpayers were gonna pay, is that?
yes, we'll still get that money.
The fire tax, any overage that we haven't dispersed to the fire companies is gonna be distributed to the fire companies. That money's dedicated.
Is that what, in the budget, is that what the, fire equipment line is, that 30K, and the contracted protection service, that's
The
77?
contracted service, it's gonna be under the general fund for 2023.
Uh-huh,
But there should be a line in there for the leftover fire tax. I don't know how Amy has exactly broken out in there.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly how it was, but that fire tax money would be set aside for, it could be special projects or air packs or whatever, so, they apparently feel they have a need, so, you know, it could be, I know you talked to what, Houston Township?
Yes.
And they did, they're willing to make a donation or a commitment to it as well, I guess.
I just know in the last COG meeting, Ron was there. Karen said that they owed us money, so,
$2,500.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I think we can take a look at it. I mean, obviously, we don't wanna just willy-nilly say, okay, here's a bunch of money, have a nice day, but, yeah, you've done your homework, you've done good. Definitely gonna take a good look at it here and see what we can do. It's unfortunate that we've had two fires in the
Yeah,
township
the,
here in a couple days.
the field fire on Sawmill Road, as I know, is still under investigation. And the Tell Hill Road, as a couple of you know, I took off Tuesday to go back and further assist forestry and DCNR. We did work hot spots and we did find the cause of the fire. So
Is that under investigation?
the Tell Hill fire is no longer under investigation.
So what was the cause?
It was deemed from a campfire down by the beaver pond. We're pretty sure it had been burning since Sunday night. The intensity of where it started was a smoldering fire, so it burnt everything was in its path because it was hungry and it wanted to burn. And on Monday, when it got warmer, it basically said, "I'm starving for fuel." And when the sun got onto it, the wind picked up, it just took off.
As far as I know, you're not allowed to camp in the game lanes, so.
You are. You are allowed to camp in game lands, but there are regulations on how you camp within the game lands.
Somebody might have a trail cam or something.
I looked through there because I walked the area like 6 times on Tuesday.
There's been a lot of irresponsible activity on the game lands. I've been working with Roy Schaefer for several years now on these game lands back here because of things happening with vehicles, damage to, you know, the vegetation, laurel, you know, people racing around in there with their ATVs, and garbage, makeshift hunting camps, or let's just call it places for people to do their drugs. So that's all been, and it's being investigated, but there's been a lot of abuse in there. And I think I think the Game Commission is more focused on this particular game lands, 176. And they're stepping up their enforcement and they're stepping up their maintenance of the game lands. And I'm one of the guys, you know, there's other people helping the Game Commission as well, keep an eye on things and report things as we see them. And so I think you're going to see more of a presence. And I've complained to them that we don't see enough enforcement on these game lands. We don't see a game warden. You know, it's maybe years between seeing them. So they are going to increase their presence here. And I said, you have to do it. I said, you know, it's a heavily used game lands, you know, forested area, and with that comes some things that you don't want to have happen. So I think we're going to see that happen on the part of the Game Commission.
Any supervisors have any other comments to add?
Thank you for the information.
You're welcome. I will say, if you do see smoke during the day and you just think it might be a controlled burn, it never hurts to call the county. Because on Monday, I mean, I looked at it myself, I seen it, I just thought it was a controlled burn. If I would've went and looked it out, we could've prevented it from spreading to be that big.
You say the county, who do you mean?
Center County. You can call their non-emergency number, and you can ask them if anybody has permission for a controlled burn in the area.
Can you call the fire company and report the fire?
No, you're better off to call Center County.
Okay.
Because the county will have all that information, because if a local homeowner decides he wants to go burn some brush, and he has, you know, he might take a time to call into the county and say, hey, I'm having a controlled burn at, you know, this such and such address, just so you know.
Okay.
Then if somebody would call in, they would page a duty chief, and then we would phone the center, and they would, you know, advise us this was controlled burn in the area, and we would go and check it out just to confirm.
Is there a specific department or a number?
Yeah, I can give you the number. It's 1-800-479-0050.
Okay, okay, good information.
Thank you.
Are you supposed to call the township when you're gonna burn?
Should, call somebody
I would think,
Call the township to burn?
yeah,
if you're going to burn.
if you're going to burn.
Planning to burn.
A lot of people have in the past. You know, that way at least we know it's,
Used to be, yeah.
yeah.
What's the difference between a controlled burn and people that weekly go out and burn stuff in their property? I see them all
Controlled burns
the
are
time.
generally like the game commission does to burn off the underbrush, get rid of the ticks,
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. Somebody burning leaves in their yard, that's burning leaves in their yard. But obviously, anybody making a lot of smoke probably ought to let Center County 911 know where it is and what it is, in case, you know, some fire gets started in the game lands and, you know, everybody just thinks it's the neighbors burning leaves, so.
That's not general practice for residents to report that they're going to be burning
You would be
something.
surprised. There's a lot more people than what you think that do take the time and call over the county
Okay,
and tell them they're gonna be burning it. Some people will call a day before and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm gonna be burning between this time and this time.
is it a requirement?
No. But it's just sometimes people do it because they don't want the fire department showing up and,
It's a good
Because
courtesy.
there's too
Yeah.
much smoke.
yeah.
I looked out my front door today and my neighbor's field was full of smoke. And I thought, oh no. But they were just burning their leaves.
And it carried across, yeah, burning leaves creates a lot of smoke. I never liked it myself.
All right, well, Derek, thanks for coming in, appreciate it.
Yeah,
And,
no problem.
We'll definitely give it good consideration. Obviously, Ms. Hartle's not here this evening, so we're gonna have a good discussion on how we wanna allocate the project there.
Okay.
And in the meantime,
Thank you for being there for,
Yeah.
yeah, I know that you have some association with the township here. If you talk to any of the other townships, if they have any indication they're willing to kick in on the project, please let us know. Maybe we can have a discussion with them as well. See if we can get something to happen for you.
Okay.
All right? Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I-
Before you start
Okay.
here, just, on the consent agenda, we have it on the consent agenda to advertise the budget for the December 8th hearing. And I know Ms. Brooks had a question or two. Is there, usually when we adopt the consent agenda, we just make the announcement and go forward, but I assume you have something that's specific.
before we do that, Dave, do we want to approve this agenda?
Well, if
still under citizens' comments.
we just let it go under citizen comments, that'd probably be
Okay.
the best place to address it
Okay,
at this point.
all right, gotcha. I wasn't following you there. man.
Well, I was just looking down here and I thought it was under the consent agenda and I didn't want to shut things down before you had a chance to talk, so.
You want me to talk?
Yep, please come up and,
I want you to help me understand what's going on with this. My name is Rebecca Brooks with manager position. And what I don't understand is who is doing the job now.
Who is doing what job?
The job that the manager does, the job description of the manager. Who is doing all these things?
The staff is handling the duties that they've been handling, that the manager had supposedly been handling, but my understanding is that they are getting everything done that the manager was doing successfully.
Okay. Okay, so it's my understanding in that case then, having been a manager, having managers for how many ever years, the reason for having a manager has changed because obviously, Dave, you worked and you were paid and you worked pretty hard as a manager and
I tried.
I supported you, and I don't understand why it's no longer a useful position to have in
Well,
the township.
I might be able to, well, I'm not saying it's not a useful position. When I was a manager, I was also the sewage enforcement officer and held other hats. And somewhere along the line, it got so that the manager was just directing the minions and not necessarily doing anything useful other than being a face at a meeting or going to other meetings. And the problem, at least as I saw it, was it might be the manager's duty, but if the manager dumps something on Amy or Brett to do for them, then the manager's not really doing the job.
In that case, it's
In which case, the manager was kind of redundant and pointless.
yeah, and it's that individual that is doing that was hired to do the job, is asking other people to do the job, correct?
Yep, that's part of the issue.
Okay,
I don't know what my feelings anyways, is that when we get another manager, and it's probably gonna be a when and not an if, but that person would have other duties. And, there's not enough here, to manage Amy and Brett in the office, and the road crew's gonna have its own deal. And unfortunately, most managers don't have a lot of road experience, so
I see.
it's kind of silly to have somebody that doesn't have any road experience telling the road crew what to do when they have the actual experience. So whoever ends up being in that position, I think is gonna be somebody that is very flexible. Or I know that another municipality also talked about maybe having, you can also have joint managers with other municipalities if you got a small municipality, somebody that might administer certain things, but. And I'll just use this as an example, say Warriors Township was looking for somebody for 15, 20 hours a week, and maybe Halfmoon has a manager for 15, 20, we just share that individual. They would have specific grant writing skills or, something else that works along that line. It's not that we don't need a manager, but we don't have enough work for somebody to do if they're just gonna delegate to other people. And then, it's kinda like, well, why are we paying this person 6 figures, because that's what it costs, if we're not getting any benefit out of it?
I base a position on need. And I think we've clearly demonstrated this year that we are able to operate perform all the functions of the township without a manager. And I
Okay.
think we've demonstrated that.
Okay.
I would tend to differ. I think there needs to be strong justification to have a manager with a significant salary to oversee a small number of people who are already performing all the duties that need to be performed by the township administration. And that is what's happening. The public works people are performing all the work related to public works. And in terms of administration, our secretary and our treasurer and tax collector are performing all the functions within administration and meeting all of the requirements. In terms of planning, the COG planner has been doing the planning all along. In terms of sewer enforcement, it's being done by code administration. Code administration also handles obviously all the permitting and applications for permits and residential and commercial building inspection and all those things. I don't see the need. I don't see the purpose of having a position where the specific enumerated duties and responsibilities are not there. Okay, and until I see that, I will not agree to creating a position at a significant expense that is not necessary. And that's my position on it.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to add, oh, you're gonna ask them, okay.
Anybody? So my question is, next question is, if Amy and Brett are doing the bulk of the work of the paid manager, and why aren't they getting that salary? Why aren't, as well as all the other things they've been doing and getting paid for?
Let's break that down, okay? They're not doing the duties of a manager. Amy is doing the duties of a secretary under second-class township code. Brett is doing the duties of a treasurer under second-class township code. He's also the tax collector, okay?
Mm-hmm.
There are no specific, separate, unique duties that need to be performed by a manager. If there were, if it was a requirement, if we couldn't function without it, we would have it. But the fact of the matter is, there is no need for it. That's why we don't have one.
So one of them is capable and qualified.
And they are properly compensated, by the way, too.
To write a grant, to write grants or oversee other things that the manager might have as a responsibility.
Might have done but didn't do?
Okay, so you had a bad experience with a
No. Been here for
manager.
38 years. We've had three managers?
Four, at
Four
least
managers.
four. So, and, you know,
They can in fact, write grant applications.
Okay.
I am participating with Brett right now to write a grant application.
okay,
And we can do
okay.
that as well.
okay. So, I have a question about their pay on the budget. It's they're both, it's listed as to what their salary is, and it listed what their overtime was. And my question is, they both have about the same amount of overtime. Why is Brett getting $10,000 as a raise and Amy getting $4,000?
Because Brett was severely underpaid in
Okay,
his job.
that's what I wondered, okay.
And I won't get into some personnel problems that we had with the previous manager, but let's just say that
Right,
Brett was not compensated for the level of professionalism.
what
that
he's
he was
doing, okay,
doing.
thanks.
And so that's why.
Okay, thank you,
We're trying
Thanks
to,
for
trying to
answering.
get everybody to where they
It's
really need to be.
it's a good question. They're all good questions.
Yep.
And I think you have a right to know what is happening.
Yeah.
But if the work's getting done and it's getting done at an exceptional level, I might add,
absolutely.
you know, to have a position that some people feel is necessary, but experience has demonstrated that it isn't, it doesn't really make sense. Now, can that change in the future? Of course it can.
Okay,
Every year is a new year. And something may come up where we have to have another position. How we define it, and the thing is, by repealing the manager ordinance, what that allows us to do then is create a position as we need, as time demonstrates that we need it, to tailor that position to perform the functions that it needs to perform.
okay,
If that's be supervisory
yeah.
or managerial, so be it.
I
But
will tell you from talking with staff, their stress level is decreased.
excellent.
And their production level has gone up.
Wonderful.
exponentially.
That's
And
wonderful.
they have just been fantastic.
Relieved,
they're happy.
great.
Yeah, and I was
Great.
afraid, we lost several employees, and it wasn't because of the grumpy chairman of the board either. A lot of people bailed because they were not happy with how they were being treated, and that was coming from the management side of things. So, I know you wouldn't know that unless you were in here, but the productivity, everybody has stepped up and really done a great job. I can't say enough good things about all the employees.
Wonderful.
And Brett and Amy in particular, because they stuck it out, they
Yeah,
stayed through it.
Yeah,
And it's just so efficient that
yep,
I have no complaints.
Wonderful.
It was just like a veil was lifted off this place. Productivity went through the roof. And Amy and Brett are just on top of things. The road crew's been doing a fantastic job.
And that was another thing, there's no, nothing in the budget for a roadmaster, is that just because?
Well, the roadmaster is an appointed position.
I see.
It doesn't really, it's not like hiring a manager. Anybody, I could pick anybody in the township, anybody on this board could be a roadmaster.
I see.
Obviously, you want to have people with experience, and we do have a good crew, but, you know, when that position comes up,
I see. Then it'll come
a
up.
certain level's going to have to be.
Okay.
Right now, we do have
Okay,
a township supervisor on the far end who has more knowledge about roads than I think most anybody. Jim Smith has been sort of in charge of the crew to keep everybody together. He's been doing a great job. So
great.
I hate to mess with things too much right now until we, you know, as we work through this first full year, you'll get to see how everybody's doing.
Good.
And especially when the snow hits this winter time. But I think we'll be well prepared for it at that
I
time.
do have a question, Becky, if I could
Uh,
say something.
Sure.
One of the things that concerns me about not having a manager is the loss of opportunities particularly for grant writing. One of the things I can think of right now is that the infrastructure bill is providing a lot of money available for rural broadband. But it requires someone writing a grant to whoever in the federal government to ask for that money. And I know there's all sorts of criteria, and I already started reading some of the criteria, who this and that. But that's just an example. And maybe not here in Half Moon is bad, but I just remember reading about the students up in Snowshoe that had no internet access and were driving to McDonald's and sitting beside the McDonald's in order to get access to the internet to do their homework. And I would even say is growing up here in the county, I know what it was, or not in the township, I know what it was like to not have cable or anything else. And I'd go to school and everybody else was talking about cable and HBO and everything that there, and in Half Moon there was just nothing.
Yeah.
So,
Well, when you
I don't
grew up
want,
in
I don't
Half
want.
Moon, there were what, 800 people in the township?
Yeah, probably, but
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
but I'm talking about the dynamic. I don't want if there's opportunities, especially from grants like from the federal government, to be getting access to broadband internet out here so that everyone, every child has access to it. We should be doing that, and that's something that I would think that a manager would be sussing out all the details and then writing the grant. That's just one example, and I suspect there are many, many opportunities like that that may be going by if we don't have someone there to be finding out about them, digging out the details, and then doing the writing.
Well, we're a relatively wealthy municipality in per capita income out here. I know it wasn't that way when you grew up out here, but right now we're, top of the stack.
Not
So-
as far as internet.
No,
Well, maybe not as far as
And
that goes,
I'm
but,
I can tell
Windstream's
you,
awful.
even on Buffalo Lane.
right, but Comcast or whomever is not gonna come out here
Windstream's
and
awful.
do anything. I know, because I.
Windstream is, I don't have many.
So, but.
Any
you know,
grant could help.
Yes,
Well-
but I'm not sure that the title for a person who writes grants is manager.
It may be we hire a
may
grant
hire
writer for something
Position to do
specific.
that.
Well, then I think you should seriously look into it, because we know that there is a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure bill out there that is going to be funding a lot of things. And I don't even know about all the opportunities, but they're there.
Yes.
And we should be taking
And I-
advantage of them.
Yep, and we will.
So,
I know you want to talk, but let Rebecca Brooks complete her thoughts here, and then we'll shift people around.
Right.
I only have two more comments.
All right.
One is what is the contracted protection service of 77,000? Is that's related to the fire people, and what does that line item do in the budget?
Oh, boy.
I mean,
Well,
is
depending
it
on
to
which
help?
one it is, we have a contract with Warriersmark Fire Company, we have a contract with Port Pototo Fire Company, but we
Oh,
also
I know what it is now.
donate money to, we give money to Port Matilda Borough for workers' comp on the firemen. And we've been doing that since I was a manager, because Port Matilda Borough was, when you're a fireman and you're living, or your fire company's in, let's say, the borough of Port Matilda, the borough is responsible for workers' comp on everybody.
Oh, I see.
And that's an unfair burden on a little tiny borough, when obviously we're all getting fire service, fire protection from the fire company. So what we did was we said we were gonna help pay for some of those costs, and I believe that's.
I see.
But the contracted amount, we have a 4-year contract with Warriors Mark. We have an annual contract with Port Matilda, which renews automatically unless either party disagrees and wants to revise it. So contracted service is specifically related to those written contracts. There are additional expenditure, there are additional things that we pay for outside of those contracts. But that contracted amount, it covers just those contracts, the one with Warriors Mark and the one with Port Matilda.
Okay. I think there's.
It took me a little while for that
Yeah,
to register.
there's-
Yeah,
I
I don't
think-
remember, Derek, do you remember what the amount of additional monies we made, the board made a vote earlier in the year, basically to pledge additional funds to both Warriors Mark and Port Matilda Fire Company. I think Warriors Mark was like 10,000 or 15,000 in addition to, for whatever special projects that they need. But generally, we ask them to come in, like Derek did here tonight, and say, hey, we'd like to do this. And if they says, well, you know, all we want to do is put new chrome lug nuts on the fire truck, probably not going to get the money from the board. However,
Right,
if they come back and say, we really need air packs for the guys to go into the building.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, that's what it's.
Yeah, I just think that like people have said before, that we all need a fire department, and
And ambulance.
Port Matilda is
And I don't want to leave them
essential
out.
Right,
for us, because they're the closest.
right. Port Matilda serves 5 municipalities. Okay, what I would like to see, I personally, as one of the supervisors, is a definitive budget from each fire company. Warriors Mark handles a portion of the township.
Yeah,
Port
and so
Matilda
does
handles
Alpha.
the majority of the township. And I want to see a definitive budget, both operating and capital. Capital is the big stuff, the big ticket items, the things that they need to purchase. The total, I want to see the total. And then I want to see it distributed equitably among those municipalities. And each one of us fund our portion of that total budget, so that they don't have to come and ask us for money for this and money for that. That they have the money in their budget, they prioritize their spending,
Yeah.
they decide how to spend it, it's their responsibility. We are responsible for providing the adequate amount of money for the, and all 5 municipalities have to do that. Without all 5 municipalities providing an equitable share,
Yeah.
it doesn't bode well for the fire company. So
We don't
that's a
wanna name any
discussion.
names, but if ABC Township decides they don't want to support the fire company, and the fire company starts losing ground because they're not supporting them, that doesn't help any of us. You know, we're all in the, you know, like they used to do about the Spring Creek watershed, we're all in the same bathtub,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
So we have to make sure that they stay a viable fire company. And I know, you know, Ron has, you know, been hard on people, but I know he's working hard to, and I know Ron can speak for himself, but I know he's working hard to try to get everybody pulling in the same direction, so that the fire company has a solid number that they can count on every year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't
yeah.
think of anything more important than public safety,
Oh, right,
than fire companies. I mean, the roads are
Well,
important, because
ambulance.
without the roads, you can't get the emergency vehicles there.
right.
But, so there are very basic, essential priorities in this township and any other
Absolutely.
township. And I think it's a matter of prioritizing, for the municipalities to prioritize their spending to meet those basic, those most important needs. And that's what I want to see happen, so that these people don't worry about where their money's gonna come from next
Right.
year
Right.
to buy the things that they need. They have to decide what they need to buy. We can't do it for them, because
Right.
they're the experts. So they decide everything, they put it into a form of a budget, and we have to fund that budget. But it has to be done equitably.
Yeah.
We can't be expected to pay an inordinate portion of the total bill.
Right. Yes, and I would, dare I say, I would insert the same bathtub into the library issue because we're contributing, and if we get out, you know, we're all in the same bathtub, but educating our children, the importance of educating our children. So let me just say that. Okay, my last question is, why is Chenelly the second or third on the what needs to be done list?
Chanelli Drive.
Yeah.
That's one that, maybe I ought to defer to Chuck.
Oh, Chuck.
Not really, they're just numbered for a
Oh,
reason, they're all
okay.
gonna get
Yep.
done next year.
What needs to be done on Chenelly?
The far end of Chenelly's falling apart.
Oh, is it? Oh,
on
okay.
The woods end of it,
Oh, okay.
there's not much left of that road.
Oh,
And most of it's because of the shade all the time from
Right,
the trees.
right,
Never
okay.
really dries out. But when you see Chenelly, that's just a portion from the far end of it in to, I think we might have extended it almost into the low spot before the stop sign.
okay. All right, I was just curious.
It's just 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, it's not, hey, that's the
Okay,
third one down on
it just
the
doesn't
list.
seem like, didn't for me.
And we did apply
For
for
a while.
county grants to assist with those projects as
Okay.
well, so,
Good,
we'll see what happens.
good.
We never know how the paperwork's gonna
You
be.
never know.
We're gonna do a lot of road projects next year.
A lot of road projects. There's been a lot of neglect and the volume needed to be turned up.
Okay, good. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
So, not to
Please take
belabor.
the seat, the hot seat.
It was so comfy back there.
Same chair, though.
Okay, same chair. So
Same.
I just have a question specifically for you, Dave, because you have been a township manager. And I just want to know, if you look back on all the things you did as a township manager, do you see those things being taken care of now? And not just a yes. I mean, there has to be something that you did back then
Well,
that is not being taken care of now.
yeah, I was a sewage officer then, and I took all the minutes, which Amy does now. The sewage officer's position, of course, is contracted out to the Center Region Code Office. I gotta tell you, I don't think we're missing anything.
You really look back at all that you did and you think it's all being
Well-
covered now?
I had a big investment in it because I'm from the area.
Right.
So, I felt fairly strongly, obviously I feel strongly about it, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. Because I
Right.
took a lot of garbage early on in the year and most people would have just said, nah, the heck with it. But I felt pretty strongly that things were not right. And, you know, some of it was my experience of having sat in the office, but also, you know, concern for the people that live and work here.
Right, I'm just asking you though, the specific duties that you had as a township manager,
Well, I
are
wrote-
all of those being covered now with your existing people?
I would say, well, we actually have a bigger staff now than we did when I was here.
So your answer is yes.
Yeah, I think
There
we're-
isn't anything that's,
I think, well, I mean, you know, if we could get some more work on the subdivision land development ordinances, you know, that would be nice. I'd like to upgrade some of those. I'd like to fix some. Unfortunately, a lot of the ones that I had written when I was here, somebody previous to my sitting here at this table and after I left the office back there, decided they weren't necessary because they had no engineering experience and they just.
so there is work that can
There's
still be
things that need
being
to
done?
Stepped up and done.
By who?
But I'm relying heavily on.
By
Center
manager?
Region Council of Governments, our planner.
So you have people in mind that can handle,
There are people.
things that are
dealing with
missing.
that
They're
stuff.
people
Well,
that are
good. That's what
trained
I'm
to do it.
asking.
Well,
you.
believe me, you know, I think Halfmoon Township's a fantastic place to live, and there may be people out here that live here that don't feel that way. but
Well,
I
you
think it's a
know, I
pretty
remember
special place.
when we first moved out here back in '87, and Rick started building our house in '86, and he came to the township and he asked, you know, where's your code? The guy said,
We didn't have
code? We don't have a code. If you want to stick up 4 posts and wrap it with paper, you can call it your home.
Yep.
And so I don't want to get
In
to
80
that
in
point where
86?
people are being 86.
Yep. We didn't have code out
We
here.
had Boca.
They had nothing.
Yeah, but the township didn't regulate any of that stuff. It was not state mandated, so you could pretty much do what you want except for the electrical stuff, which you need an electrical inspection.
And COG kind of provides our code, right,
They
for
do
us?
currently, yes.
Okay,
Um,
just keeping that in mind.
Anyone else? Comments, concerns?
That was all.
All right, move on to the next thing. Approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion by the board? Call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. 4-0 approved. Okay, next thing up, approval of the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes for October 27th, 2022.
Do I hear a
Regular Board of
second?
Supervisor meetings.
I'll second.
Ron moved, Chuck seconded. Any discussion, spelling, questions, comments? Hearing none, follow call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Ron moved, do I hear a second?
Second?
Comments, concerns by the board? Hearing none, call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Consent agenda is approved. Discussion items. Smith Road traffic study, speed study. There you are, back there.
Come on up.
If I can get your name here.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Rob Watts with McCormick Taylor. We've been brought on by the township to serve as your traffic engineer as you need. Amy gave us a call and noted that there were some concerns and interest in looking at the speed limits on Smith Road, so we helped organize a speed study, and we provided a summary of that in the memo. Would you like me to go back through it in detail, or give you sort of the broad overview, and then we can
Why don't we hit the
look more at
highlights,
the end?
and if we need to dive into it, we can.
Okay. Well, the speed study, where we start, is where we look at the speeds that are actually out there today on the road. And looking at Smith Road, there are really kind of three sections to that road. There's the section from about 550 to the corner there at Charlotte Street, and then Charlotte Street over to about Sky Harbor Drive, the west end of that, and then from there over to Moringa Road. Kind of three different characters to the roadway. So we took speeds in those three areas, and the statistic that we look at in the engineering world for setting speed limits is the 85th percentile speed. In other words, the speed under which 85% of traffic is moving and 15% are moving above. The results of that showed that Section 1, which we are calling PA 550 to Charlotte Street, had very high speeds, as you can imagine. It's kind of wide open through there, not as much development or driveways. 50 miles an hour one direction, 46 miles an hour the other direction. Posted speed's 35, by the way, the whole way across.
Is this an average speed?
This is an 85th percentile speed,
So 85%,
under 15% over.
okay,
And this is the statistic that's written into most of the regulations when it comes to speed limits.
okay, okay.
The memo gives you the average speed as well, if you're interested in that statistic, so you can get a sense for how that plays out.
Okay.
Section 2 had lower 85th percentile speeds, 43 miles an hour in the northbound direction, 41 in the southbound. And Section 3 was very similar, 42 in the northbound direction, 43 in the southbound direction. Now, taking those speeds, there are basically two places in the Pennsylvania Code that talk about speed limits. And I'm going to tell you about one of them now, and then we'll talk about another one, which may result in me amending this memo. I'll explain that here in just a minute. But the Pennsylvania statute, Title 67, which is for transportation, establishes speeds according to the 85th percentile speed, and the speed limit may be posted within 5 miles an hour of the 85th percentile speed. 5 miles above or below, there's some flexibility there, except in certain conditions. For instance, where a major portion of the highway has insufficient stopping sight distance if traveling at the 85th percentile speed. In other words, if they're traveling at that high 85th percentile speed, Are there driveways that don't have enough sight distance, or vehicles don't have enough sight distance? They might come up over one of those rises and right behind a vehicle that's pulling out in front of them. A situation like that, which I think Smith Road does have some of those situations happening, particularly in Section 2. Or if the available corner sight distance on side roads is less than the necessary stopping sight distance for the through vehicles. Again, looking at vehicles coming off of the side roads and the distance they have to see a vehicle coming up over one of those hills or around the vegetation that might be along the sides of a driveway. We did not do a formal sight distance study out there. We figured we could take that step if need be, but I think we can agree that if vehicles are moving as fast as the study says they are, they're probably in a situation where they could, come up on somebody and not have enough sight distance. It's sort of a no-win situation in that condition. The third criteria has to do with crashes, and we did not look at crash data specifically, but that's another criteria that can be used. Under those conditions, the speed limit may be reduced up to 10 miles an hour below the 85th percentile speed. Those are the numbers that are involved. So if you take the 10 miles an hour and you compare it in Section 1, the 35 miles an hour is already more than 10 miles an hour under the 85th percentile speed. And that section probably isn't as much concern as the other two sections. I think in Section 2 and 3 you could justify going down another 5 miles per hour according to Title 67. And you'd end up at 30 miles an hour under that condition. I want to talk a little bit about Section or Title 75, which is actually the vehicles. It's the vehicle section of the Pennsylvania Code, which lays out sort of the understood speeds for different kinds of areas and different kinds of roads. It's sort of like rules of the road. If there's no posted sign there, we generally assume that this is what it's going to be. And that says, that's where you get the 55 miles an hour where it's not marked. It also says that in residential districts, the speed will be considered to be 25 miles per hour. And that's the part that's not in the memo. It's not generally used to set speed limits. Mm-hmm. It's generally used so that you don't have to post 25 mile an hour speed limit signs all over your local roads. But I was reminded, as I talked to some of the local planners, this is the part that was used to lower the speed limit on Atherton Street in town from 35 to 25 fairly recently.
Noticed that. I don't go to town.
This is what they use. They use the residential district designation to get that done. Now, it's not all residential, but it is in some sections.
Right.
So, under that, you could, I imagine, declare this to be a residential district, which for the most part it is,
Right.
and use that as your justification for posting 25 miles per hour, if you want to use it in that way. Now, PennDOT, I think, doesn't like what the borough did to get that 25 mile an hour speed, because the 85th percentiles over there are more than 10 miles an hour above.
That's a state road.
That's business 320.
And that is a state road.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the thing, the code itself, or the title itself, says that that provision of residential district can be used if the roadway is not a numbered traffic route or is functionally classified by the department as a local highway. Now, neither of those things describe Atherton Street, and they managed to use it to get to 25.
Until somebody sues them and they.
Or they try to enforce it and somebody challenges it.
Yeah.
And that's oftentimes where you run into it. You can set the speed. We were having this conversation before the meeting. You can decide to set the speed on your own roads, as you want. But when it comes to enforcement, someone challenges it based on, the fact that the running speeds out there are more than 10 miles an hour, away from the 85th. They could challenge it if they wanted to.
I mean, I live off of Smith Road, and I travel it all the time. I walk it, and people fly up and down that road.
They do.
They
go too fast.
pass on that road. They pass on the road. There's a part of the road when you first come in from 550. There's a small rise, and it drops down over like this and drops. There are people that pass on that rise. I've watched them do it. And I'm thinking, someday somebody's going to get killed. There have been accidents, spectacular accidents, with cars going airborne in that part of the road as well. It's 35 miles an hour there, but every other secondary township road that we have is 25 miles an hour. The only exception, I think, is Marengo Road, which I believe is 35. That connects Route 550 with Route 45. You know, so that's an artery. And I just
Smith Road
thought it
is
was
considered collector.
an anomaly to, Collector Road. You know, 35, 40 years ago, there was nothing out there on that. That stretch, was a lot of farm. It was Smith Farm, it was, the different farms out there. And it's changed a lot. There's a lot more houses along that road. And it scares me. Plus there's a lot of deer running around.
Well,
too.
yeah, and to your point, when I was out there, I did see people walking along the road. It was a nice day, and one woman had baby, carriage. She was rolling up and down the road, and she was headed to the park, you could tell, and,
Yeah.
nice place over there. That's where people go.
But, you do the study, it's a scientific approach, and you have your, your specifications, your regulations to do all that, so.
Last time a traffic study was probably, a proper one was probably done on that road. That road was probably only 15 or 16 feet wide. And that was probably only 1,600 people living in the township at that time.
Well,
It's not much wider right now, and
No,
I
it's
know a
not.
couple of people who live back there. One fellow just built back there, and he said, I would fully support getting that roadway widened and adding a bike lane or something like that. So he noted the people walking, and in my opinion, with being able to lower the speed, and people just drive faster than they should, and that's just, it seems like it's human nature. The idea is
It's
to
been brought us
communicate.
by sway bars and disc brakes and anti-lock brakes. You take an old car and you try to do that, you're gonna be in the ditch. Well, in today's modern car, you can fly on these roads.
And it gives people an unnatural sense of security in that. Right now, in the traffic industry, we're trying to get to 0 fatalities, 0 severe injuries. That's the Vision Zero type of thing. And lowering speeds is one of the first ways to go about doing that. So I think going in that direction makes sense. You lower it too far and people just blow it off. They're like, that's ridiculous. You want to remain relevant while communicating to people, this is the safe speed to drive this road, given the driveways, given the people, given the deer. And sometimes you want to use that as a way to set your speed as well.
And the thing is, even if we made the speed limit 10 miles an hour, if nobody's there to enforce it, the
Yeah.
speed limit is whatever people drive.
Yeah, lowering the speed limit doesn't necessarily lower people's speeds. I mean, the rule abiders will follow that lower speed, but those who want to drive it how they're comfortable are going to stay at the speed. You just get a wider range of speeds, which is actually not as good.
Well, the other thing too, if you're out walking on that road and you think the speed limit is 25 and somebody goes by at 50, you're not expecting that.
No, that's,
And I'm not advocating for not lowering the speed limit, but I don't want to give anybody a false sense that changing that number is going to make any difference.
Well, the same goes for any speed limit.
Yep.
If there's no enforcement, people are going to abuse it. I do think there's a psychological component to posted speed limits. If I see a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, I may still drive too fast, but my too fast is lower than it was if it said 45 miles an hour.
and the roadway design with the 9-foot lanes really does speak to a lower speed, and people don't necessarily feel comfortable on a 9-foot lane. They're just like, well, there's not a lot of room. That may actually work in your favor to suppress speeds. I've heard people say, well, let's widen the road so people feel more comfortable. Well, that's
Well, I
just,
had that conversation.
that's
Yeah,
gonna
that-
bump the
that
speeds
turns
the
it
other
into a
direction,
raceway,
probably.
yeah.
Patton Township was saying, what can we do to get people to slow down in Park Forest? I said, well, the problem is you got a 30-foot wide paved road. I said, you
Sometimes
just
wider.
invite people to drive like
Right.
crazy people, because as soon as they leave their house, it's not their neighborhood, even though it is.
Even paved berms.
You know, people drive fastest in their own neighborhoods. That's
Sometimes.
kind of, that's usually the trend.
Sometimes.
Yeah, so I I can revise the memo with the part about Title 75, which isn't, like I say, I don't know that I like that. And if you did go down to 25, you would be more than that 10 miles an hour away from your
But if
85th
we did
percentile
30,
speeds.
let's just throw something out there.
Mhm.
And we did it based on sight distances from driveways. Do you think that's justifiable?
I do. I think that fits really well. The speeds we measured were, what, 41, 42?
Yeah.
And we measured in areas where we could set the counters most easily, which tend to be the more broad open. You take a speed at any point along there, it's going to be a little higher, it's going to be a little bit lower. I think we're within sort of the margin of error there to kick down another 5 miles an hour. I think it's in keeping with
That would be
the
on
spirit
sections 2
of
and
what's
3.
here. It's not, if you want to get all numbers and by the numbers and all that kind of stuff, no, it's 6, it's not 5, you got that there, but I think you're
Do you take
well
into
within it.
account the effects of putting these devices up with a, a sign that tells you how fast you're going? I think that tends to cause people to slow down too.
The speed feedback devices have been shown to be effective when used, removed, repeated. But when they just stay there on
they
all
get
the time,
ignored after a
people
while.
get used to them and they go away. It's the use of them as a supplemental measure, along with your pavement width, along
Right.
with speed limit postings.
Okay.
And you have a number of curves out there, especially on the, section 3 out toward Marengo Road that, do need to be, I mean, they're posted at 15 miles an hour now. So a lower speed limit out there, I don't think is gonna
Are
Gonna
they
be-
posted? Does it say? Are those
Yeah.
three sharp turns on Smith Road, are they posted at lower speed limit?
they all three have warning speeds. The one near Charlotte Street has a 25 warning speed, and the other two toward Marengo Road have 15.
And one of the things you don't have marked on here, and that is the park area. I would think that there should be reduced speed zone by the park.
Absolutely, since the children's part of that park is right by the road.
It's definitely a consideration, and
That's a
it's
straight stretch
it's
too.
it's all about the people who walk there and what it does to to bring them there. How do you get there? You have to walk along the roads. So sure.
Yeah,
Mhm.
then we're looking at a road that there are several different speed limits posted. And people, I would think psychologically, would see that as saying, this isn't a place where I can just get on and drive one speed. That there are everything from turns to
Mhm.
parks and everything else that maybe I need to take into consideration.
Yeah, the consistency and having a consistent speed all along the road is definitely a good thing. We see today, though, that from our speed study, it's all 35, but section 1 is much higher in speed than the other two. So I think if we change sections 2 and 3, and if you leave section 1 at 35, I don't think that creates an incredible disconnect till it's all said and done. We're just communicating that in section 2, and it is a different feel in section 2 and 3. We communicate that 30 is the safer speed to run at.
So would the visibility coming out of Charlotte affect your thoughts on that? Because as you're coming down Charlotte and you tee into Smith Road,
Mhm.
there's a bush right on the corner that cuts the visibility. At
Mhm.
nighttime, no problem, you can see headlights coming.
Right.
But daytime, you have to keep looking.
Yeah, if there's an issue with vegetation on a corner like that, I believe the township can require that vegetation to be removed if it's a sight distance problem. That's a battle a lot of townships don't like to take up, but if it is a safety issue, things grow and they're
Right.
planted and then all of a sudden they're bigger than what they thought it was going to be, and you have to say, well, we got to trim that back for the
Right.
sake of the sight distance out there. We didn't look at it specifically, but I did actually drive down and then back out Charlotte. And I believe there's that bush, but then there's also, isn't there like a rise and then you come down into Charlotte a little bit there?
Right, Right, and the bush right now,
Mhm.
it had been cut way back about a year or so ago.
Mhm.
So it's just
Amazing how
on
it
the
grows.
rise
It's
again.
rising.
It's on the rise again.
Trees and tree branches.
Yeah, the guy left and sold the house to somebody else.
Yeah.
and They moved in.
I guess, Chuck, Roseanne, do you have anything to add? Questions? Feelings? I'd say just use your professional experience, whether you want to amend or add to. I will defer to you.
Well, I'd like to
It's your
include that
area.
information in here
Right.
to you.
And then the board we can take that, and then we can come bring back at another point and then make a decision as to what we want to do about the road.
Okay.
And I know that part of our project for 2023, I think that's still on the agenda, to mill the sides and fix up the, yep.
And
Fix up,
again, we fixed the road.
people go fast. Yeah, it's a dilemma.
Yep.
I mean, the road definitely needs repair work, as you
Mhm.
probably have noticed, but, you know, that is a difficulty. When you make it better, the faster they go. So, but I would say add whatever you feel should be in there, just from your personal knowledge. I'm not gonna take offense if you say it's only 25 miles an hour, we think we can justify it, or if you say you people are nuts and it should be 40. So, I mean, we are relying on you to be the expert.
Well, I will give you, do you want me to make a recommendation for you to implement and concur with, or would you prefer it to be more informational and allow you to set the speed as you see? You see
I
fit.
personally feel informational,
Mhm.
and then we can call you back in here or get contact and say we have additional questions.
Mhm.
Because I know Ron's gonna feel a lot differently than I do. I know we need to do something, but I don't know exactly what that is yet, to solve the problem. And I agree with you, the sections 2 and 3, there's too much traffic, too many people. It would definitely be a different set of rules than what the section from Charlotte Street going down a ways for the farm. Because I don't think we can enforce a different deal. Go ahead, Ron.
No, I was just gonna say, he's the professional. If he wants to make a recommendation, why not?
Yeah, whatever you want to do.
Okay. Yeah, I see it as your community, probably better, you know, your decision ultimately. You know, so whatever my recommendation is, it is what it is.
Right.
You know, I think you have avenues to go to a 30 or a 25 based on how you want to go, and if you want to run that by your legal counsel, if you feel necessary. The Pennsylvania code, as I've found, has all kinds of things that seem contradictory. It says one thing here, says another thing here.
I think having an impartial professional judgment and recommendation, I think, is very beneficial
Okay,
to us.
then I'll provide
And
that.
we're not the ones
in the
making a
vision.
decision that we're making a decision, but we're basing it on, professional, recommendation
Mhm.
My question would
or
be,
advice.
is there a limit, how many times you can change speeds? Is there a distance that a speed has to remain consistent within?
There are some general rules of thumb, the consistency idea, you know, you want to set one and kind of keep with it. I don't think I'd have 3 different speeds for the 3 different sections, but the speeds kind of show you that people drive section 1 one way, they drive 2 and 3 a separate way, and you have to go around the curve, pretty sharp curve, going from one to the other. I think that's a logical break on the corner.
Right.
I could see section 1 being 1 speed limit, and 2 and 3 seem more connected, and those being the same speed
And I
limit.
was thinking about the park concern.
Mhm.
For that short amount of distance, do you jump it down to 15 like a school zone? But is that too short of a
Yeah, you're
distance?
not permitted to go to 15. You may go to 25 or 30, but you can't go below
You
25.
can't put caution signs and flashing lights, park, or whatever.
Advisory speeds, and
Right.
yes, and you can, provide warning devices where people like to cross Smith Road as well.
And you can put
Mhm.
narrow road.
We'll just choke it down to 10 feet, squeeze them through.
You'd have them all over Smith Road, narrow road, narrow road.
They're not in the beginning.
The problem with signage is the more there is, the more they get ignored.
Mhm.
It becomes busy, and
Kind of like
too
road
many.
work ahead the next 10 miles and you don't see anybody, and about the time you get back up to speed again, that's where the construction worker is,
Yep.
so.
Yep.
Okay.
Very good. I appreciate you coming in tonight.
No problem.
Thank you.
Suffering through the first part of our meeting. And
Not a problem
I know you
at
weren't
all.
here for a bunch of questions, but
No, I'm the treasurer for our HOA, which is enough for me, so I can appreciate where you are.
you can have. Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank
We'll
you.
look forward to your complete
I'll
analysis.
send in that revised version with the additional info and a
Thank you.
recommendation.
Thanks. Next item here, revised township fee schedule.
Well,
Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we authorize, or we approve Resolution 2022-28 to make the corrections to the township fee schedule.
Do I hear a second?
Second it?
Any questions, comments, concerns?
Now, can I ask a question? How are these fees arrived at? I mean, this is a real basic question.
They're-
How are they arrived at?
There were recommendations based on actual cost to us in the event of the engineer. Some of it has to do with what Center Region charges us for services, so we just pass it through. Some of the other fees, or you submit a subdivision plan, our engineer costs, our attorney costs, that's all factored into it based on the
But
situation.
you could lower them compared to COG's recommendations? You could set
We
them
could,
lower?
but if we're paying COG $100 for unit X, then why would we want to supplement? Let the developer pay for it.
Okay, because, you know, I haven't built a house lately, but I've talked to enough people that I hear how much permits cost.
Oh, it's expensive,
How
yeah.
really expensive it is, and how it's almost impossible for young people to build a house anymore.
It's miserable.
Yeah.
And government's grossly
And
why
I'm
it's
just wondering,
expensive.
is there any, how much time and thought has been put into this, trying to
A lot.
reduce these fees?
To try to reduce them?
Yes.
Well, I think they're established based on the cost to perform the functions necessary. The purpose for the fee, or the fee, is to pay for the service required to perform permitting, review, inspections.
Or the engineering costs associated with the township
And
review.
the cost of that, if Center, for example, if Center Region Code Administration is performing the service, we based costs based on their costs. They're going to be charging the same fee to any of the municipalities, or anybody in any of the municipalities within the Center Region. So it is what it is. I mean, it's based on cost. I don't know.
So we have another code enforcement company that has a cheaper rate. They're gonna hold where they're at, what Center Region charges. We're not allowed to make money off this. It's not like we can say, you need a building permit, we're gonna whack you $400 extra just because we love you so much.
But when it comes to construction, I would think that the inspection fees or zoning ordinance, or zoning permit or building permit fees are really the least of our worries when it comes to the cost of construction. I mean, the construction itself is tremendously expensive. I just did an addition to my house last year, and costs went up. I spent 25% more in, an increase in costs in 1 year.
For materials
And labor. And, permitting fees did not increase over that time, but the construction cost did. The availability of material has made construction tremendously expensive. But this is based on, for example, the zoning officer has to do an inspection. There's a certain fee that the zoning officer, who is from Patton Township, we
contract with that.
contract with them for zoning officer. For them to perform their services, they have a fee. And that, the permit covers the cost for them to come out and do the site inspection. Because zoning permit typically covers the site
Yep.
itself.
setbacks and things like that. So, but the fee is based on the cost for the people, necessary people to perform their service, to perform what they
So
need to
that's how it's been
perform.
calculated.
Yep.
Grant.
What's
Just
that?
to say, we can use that grant. I can't even get to the page she's on. I can't get internet in here.
It's terrible. isn't it?
So, just saying, broadband.
We have
We
wireless
just-
in this
We just
building.
updated our Wi-Fi in here at considerable cost.
It's not working.
And it's not working. Wonderful.
It's not working.
Well,
Just went to pull
Anyway.
up your page.
Does that answer your question, or
Sort of, yes.
yes and no, maybe, okay?
Yeah,
Well,
it does, but I'm, just thinking about it.
we're not really
What it-
changing, we're only changing a few specific things in here, just because there were some issues with the previous, fee schedule. And for the most part, it's not gonna affect anybody in this room or most of the people in this township.
I do have one question, and it is, what is a highway occupancy permit?
When you go to put a driveway in the township, say you're building a new house, as the engineer was stating here about having sight distance, when you go to leave your driveway and you look right and you look left, you get a highway, you get a permit, PennDOT issues them, the township issues them. We're making sure that if the road's rated at say 25 miles per hour, you gotta be able to see about 250 feet right and left. And the other thing is, if you go to stop and make a left-hand turn to turn into your driveway, you don't want somebody popping over a hill and running into you. So usually, one of our staff or the engineer or somebody is gonna go out there and check that out to make sure that it's a safe sight distance. We didn't used to do that. Or if you needed a culvert pipe, there's a ditch there, you can't just fill it in. And so that's part of that highway permit, access permit. Anybody else? Let's call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, resolution 2022-28 is hereby approved. Supervisors' reports. Anybody have anything to report?
No.
Anything for the good and welfare? Chicken dinners are back there? You fire guys?
No, but we are doing bingo.
What night's that?
It is every other Monday. Doors open at 5:30. There's 3 early bird games: 6:15, 6:30, and 6:45. And our jackpot is $1,000.
When was the last one?
Monday night?
This past Monday.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Anybody I don't see Mrs. Nauman here, or Squire here tonight, diversity, equity, inclusion. Anybody got anything to add on that? Hearing none.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn the meeting.
I hear a second. Second. Seconds. All will call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much for coming in. Meeting is hereby adjourned at 8:21.
Just that page.